Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're at. Dr. Dustin Sachs, Chief Technologist, Senior Director of Member Programming here at the Cyber Risk Collaborative. And wow, I'm so excited for what's going to happen over the next hour with you all. This is one of our, very special virtual member briefings that we do. This is an opportunity to hear from some really powerhouse thought leaders about a really important topic, one that's near and dear to my heart as the former deputy CISO for GRC at a large Fortune 100 company. Continuous control monitoring is something that we all strive for. We don't want to just do audits once a year and then say, oh yeah, we'll come back next year and see if see what's going on. I think of it like, the way we've traditionally treated controls is very much the way a kid deals with cleaning their room. They shove everything in the closet when the auditor comes in. They wait for the auditor to walk around and go, yeah. Don't touch. Don't look in there. It's okay. There's nothing in there to see. And then the minute the auditor leaves, they open the door, everything falls out, and you go, okay, cool. We'll go back to what we were doing. That's not what we want. We want our rooms to be clean and being checked regularly, because it's not when we're being audited that the attackers are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to do it when we think, when we least expect it, or when we're not prepared for it. So, certainly anybody who's got military experience understands the whole idea that you always had your bed made, or you always had, your stuff cleaned up, because you never knew when they were going to be checking you. With that being said, I want to introduce our star-studded panel, but I want to start by first thanking RegScale for sponsoring this. We do these events, and it's important. These cost money to run, and they're important opportunities. So we appreciate anytime our tech partners are work with us to make these things possible and bring these topics to you. And this is going to be a really fun one. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel. We have Dale Hoke, who's the CISO over at RegScale. We have Gary Hayslip, who needs no introduction. We were talking beforehand. If you don't have his book on your desk or nearby your desk, you are missing out if don't have at least one of them nearby. And of course, somebody who our members have seen before, and that I always enjoy having on our member briefings or opportunities to speak with our members. Roland Cloutier, former TikTok CISO, former CISO of multiple organizations, and just an all-around very knowledgeable guy when it comes to these types of topics. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to share this with us. So Dale, starting off with you, I know this discussion is really emanating to start with from a report that the team at RegScale commissioned and did. Share a little bit of the background on the report, and maybe some of the initial kind of overarching findings that you found. Why was this a topic that you really chose to focus on, and what is continuous control monitoring?
Well, so the reason that we chose to kind of bring CCM to the forefront of the conversation in and around GRC is GRC is antiquated. It's been antiquated for 10 years. So when we start talking about what is the definition of continuous controls monitoring, measure the effectiveness of security and compliance on an ongoing automated basis, right, rather than validating through periodic manual assessments. You mentioned at the top of your conversation, which is we're moving from our compliant at audit time to our controls working right now and maintaining that visibility, right? So some of the things that CCM is, it's control telemetry, right? Not just a dashboard, but actively looking at what your controls are doing. Automated evidence collection, real-time drift detection, continuous validation of control effectiveness, and machine-readable compliance actions, right? So where you can take and generate machine-readable outputs to get compliance outcomes We pay a ton of money for security operations. You should be able to take the result of those security operations and give a good report on what your cyber resilience is, and not just use compliance as a check mark, right? Or I'm sorry, as a checkbox to achieve business outcomes, right? You should be getting business outcomes and cyber resilience as a result of continuous controls monitoring.
Yeah, great points made as well. Roland, from your perspective, both you and Gary have both obviously had a lot of experience operationalizing all of this. The real question for both of you, really, and I'll start with you, Roland, is the biggest challenge, certainly one of the ones that I saw as a deputy CISO for GRC, was you'd say, okay, I need you to, I'll take a great example. The one that always kind of bit us in the butt was, UK Cyber Essentials, which says you can't have an end of life out of support operating system, software, devices, etc. And it wasn't until we were right up against the deadline saying to the teams, you need to go do this, were they actually implementing the controls we needed. And that seemed to be the trend, where it was like, unless there was we're going to lose something next week, it was like, we'll get to it. We promise we'll get to it. It's back to my analogy. It's your kid saying, well, you're not checking my room until Sunday, so I'll just do it Saturday night because I'll just do it beforehand, or the college student who says, well, my paper's not due till Monday morning, so I'll just wait till Sunday night to go do it. How do we overcome that in a practical sense? And how do we get teams that this is an extra thing on their plate to actually buy into the idea that continuous control monitoring is a good thing?
Well, I think first of all, I think we call it the wrong thing, but I think there's three things that we can do in this space that will dynamically change how that's perceived, how this is done, and actually how this industry will work. I'm a long time believer that CCM, CCMA, whatever you want to call it, should be called OCA, and that's Operational Controls Assurance. It is the epitome of what are the controls I've committed to, what are their status, and what are they right now. Right? How do I know what my defensive capability, my response capability, my regulatory assurance capability is right at this moment? And so we're getting there because of companies like RedScale, really amazing things in developing the automation to ensure the collection, control, validity, and testing, secondary testing, that people just don't want to do. So the first thing I say is get rid of the stupid stuff that no human should be doing. There's and whether it's a policy control or validation of evidence within documentation or output of logs, like seriously, people are still grepping that crap and putting it into Excel spreadsheets and then creating a secondary collection point that then goes and does something else. I mean, like that has to stop. For organizations to do this and do this well, they literally have to start to automate in a meaningful way. And some of that will include AI. And I don't want to jump into all the technologies that can be used or why they should be used. I think that's like 4 podcasts in the making. But from a simplified context, the understanding what controls, where it should be, what it should look like, how to collect it, how to validate that is that collection is correct, and where to put that is it's got to be a priority in organizations. The second part is we have to move it out of GRC. I think Dale was right. I think GRC is a thing, not an operational component or capability. And not to say some of the best organizations in the world don't have wonderful ops risk organizations. They do. But if you want to have a control capability that is as important to the business as it is to you as the CISO and it is to your regulators, then it should be handled as such. Move that into an operational space where I understand in each one of my data centers operating environments and where I have accountability and responsibility for those controls, I can see, validate, and touch those on any second during the day and migrate your control capability there. And I guess the third thing from my standpoint is we do this repetitively too many times. independently for each different jurisdictional authority that is being required. So collect once, test and validate automation through your protection ecosystem, and then have that in a data centric area that then can be collected and composed for automated reporting to the outside entities. I think you do those three things. And I'm sorry, but we get rid of the things that nobody really wants to do, and now we have an operational controls capability that is next generation.
Yeah, everything you said spot on. And I think first of all, thank you. We made it 8 minutes and 45 seconds in before we mentioned AI. So I mean, at least we didn't do it in the first like 5 minutes. So cool. We're outside the like initial waiting window. But what you said is real. I think the line that so far is the winning line from this is automate the stupid stuff. Um, I worked in a SOC where even 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago at this point now, they were still manually reviewing phishing emails. And you're like, well, SOAR's been around for 10 years now. Like, can we at least get like security orchestration that will do this for us? And maybe we still need to put eyes on some of them. I would argue we didn't need to, but maybe we need to still. But let's at least reduce the load of emails, because I'm not going to continually sit there and look at phishing emails all day. If I want to do that, I'll just wait for my mom to call me and say, "Hey, I think I got a phishing email." So and then I'll review phishing emails for her. So I think what you said is spot on. And then the other thing that really resonated with me, because it's something that we did at my last company, was this idea of collect once and use it everywhere. We would do in like December, we would end up doing our internal audits where they would come in and they'd ask for a bunch of stuff, and we would collect all that and we'd go, "Hey guys, if you help us get this data together for the internal audit, we're not going to have to come back to you 2 months from now and ask you for new data when we go do our external ISO audit. Just give it to us now and let's get it done with." And that worked out really well, and it made it less friction. Gary, from your standpoint, as somebody who's literally written the book on the role, or books on how to be, on how CISOs should do the work that they do, what is your perspective in terms of how continuous control monitoring or operational control should be done, and where are the places that maybe we're missing the mark?
Well, I mean, I was going with everything Roland was saying. I was like, I think we're done here. I think this will be a 10 minute, a 10 minutes.
Oh no, I got questions for you, Gary. Trust me.
Yeah.
But honestly, what you're describing is something that I was running into in my previous employer, where I had 5 different international regulators, and I honestly felt like we were doing audits about every 3 months, and the data that they were requesting was similar data, and it was constant. And at times I felt like we were beating up teams, asking them for just the same crap all the time. And near the end, we started automating this, to where we were like, we started automating it through Jira and through our ticketing systems and stuff. We're just trying to make it easier to where people knew, okay, it was a specific time, upload the latest on this, and you go on about your business. And and it wasn't chasing emails and trying to chase people down and stuff. The biggest thing I found with my teams, as as we were putting a lot of this in place, it was just the operational tempo and discipline of, this is part of the job. These are specific things that are going to be required. And it was, and a lot of the info that we were pulling together was a lot of the same stuff that I would actually have to report, to the board as well. And they basically wanted to know, hey, are we passing our audits? Are we keeping our regulators happy? Was there things that were in the way, or were there constant things that we would see, periodically over and over and over again? And if so, were we going ahead and going back and kind of reverse engineering our processes to get rid of, these issues that were slowing things down? And then, and at the same time that we were doing that, were we trying to find, repeatable things that could go ahead and be automated, that could be replaced. And we started using AI. We actually started using AI, and we started building GPTs that do some of this stuff, to pull some of this data and everything. Because, I got to the point to where, hiring an analyst or a security engineer to do basic work was ridiculous. I mean, if I could go ahead and use, AI, or use, technology to go ahead and remove some of our repeatable processes and automate things and have my team members focus on more important things. We were constantly looking at that. And, what I found was, speaking in some of the Slack channels that I know Roland and I are in with other fellow CISOs, I wasn't alone. There were other CISOs that were looking at the same stuff as well. And we were constantly, talking back and forth about where we could improve, things. And it was a continuous improvement. So where you're talking about continuous control monitoring, we were looking at continuous improvement of managing those controls, and then being able to go ahead at any time, being able to stay, being able to say that, we're at this level of maturity. We've got these things in place. We've got these continuous processes in place. We're constantly reviewing them. And oh, by the way, here's any type of required documentation that, you're requesting to show we're at this level of risk management. And where it was a payoff for me was after we started putting these things in place and they were maturing, when it come time to talk to Marsh, to come time to, redo our cyber insurance for the year, I was able to show them, what we were doing and, how we were managing it. And we actually got a reduction, on our costs, for insurance. And that's what they wanted to see, is that they wanted to see that, hey, did you understand your risks? Did you know what controls you have in place? Did you have processes in place? And they thought some of the things that we were doing were kind of unique. But, listening to Roland, obviously there's other people that were looking at this as well, from different lenses, from different regulatory, requirements. And we're thinking the same thing. This is too manual. We need to remove this stuff, but we also need to continuously be, monitoring it and look at where we can, make upgrades and do it better.
Yeah, and again, everything you said spot on. Dale, coming to you, I know you and I both talk to a myriad of different CISOs, not just these two brilliant men sitting next to us, but or below us or wherever they are on the screen. But the question that I've got for you is, one of the things I certainly hear a lot from our community members, and one of the things that I've heard from CISOs is, this is all great and good if you've got visibility into what's going on. And I have yet to meet a CISO who says I have 100% visibility into everything going on the network for whatever reason. So how do we balance the need? How do we do continuous control monitoring effectively when we know there's a bucket of known unknowns out there?
Right. So, and this is where Roland and I have a really interesting perspective. It is kind of 180 out. So, first you have to kind of sit down and figure out where you are in your maturity, right, around CCM. And if you are still doing annual assessments, manual screenshots, and control validation happens after the fact, once every 3 years, or you do a group of control once every year, you're largely in the level one kind of manual piece, right? And you need to start identifying where you can capture efficiencies through the use of automation. Now, what I recommend with CISOs is find the ugliest area, and a lot of them are access controls, right? Where you do access control reviews, figure out how to automate that with Entra and pick a small area to kind of start picking apart, and then build metrics and start to get buy-in from your team on moving towards CCM, right? Because once you get buy-in, then you can move faster and faster and faster. Now, I want to kick this question to Roland because he has a different outlook on it. Mine is from a far more junior CISO role. These two gladiators, right, have had a lot of experience in operationalizing this. So I'd like to hear Roland's take on it as well.
I'd like to have a whiteboard with me and Gary going like this all over the place.
Yeah,
Uh,
John Madden-esque.
He's gonna get. Yeah, I was about to say he's gonna go John Madden style on. He's gonna start drawing on the screen and be like, "Well, what you do is you go over here and then you drive it over there and then."
I want to play off what both of you guys said, because I think it's really important. This broad collection requirement is critically important. In some of it's great because it's within our purview, our jurisdiction control area. It's our technology that we're accountable for operating, delivering, and securing our businesses with. But a lot of it isn't. I mean, it's IT, it's engineering, it's product delivery, it's cloud platform engineering. It is, give me a litany of things that it is. And sure, do our policies say that you have to turn on logging or you have to do so and so? Sure, but that's not a construct by which you can pull information in any real way. I think we have to take a step back in how we design our organizations. I mean, we've taken leaps forward. I mean, think about some of the people we have in our teams now. Gary's hiring AI data science type people. Most organizations have content development engineer teams on board, right? So between what I would call cyber data architecture and development, right? Because we have all these big data lakes for security now, to bring our own tools in, to be able to pass them off to other tools to do things. And we have a content denory, so essentially a data engineering organization, if you will, that creates rule bias for us in the tools. Why don't we consolidate those into an organization that does it for the company, and we become a service provider back to the organization saying, here's a control that, and I'll just use engineering. Engineering has in product for something. We provide a service to say, in order to show that the control is in place, to be able to collect that data, be able to automate it, and to be able to prove it at any time, you need these 4 things and a rule in the system to be able to do that. Go build it for them and collect that data, right? So at the time that they're delivering a project, it is no different than following a CI/CD pipeline, a phases and gate process, a by design process. I don't care what you call it, but in that process, there is a controls automation verification service that we hopefully are providing back to the business. That doesn't slow them down. It's fast. It's done on the side. It's in parallel to what they're doing based on the technology they have. And then that goes into the data pool that allows us to do all the other cool stuff we've been talking about, like check on that, validate it. Because even if we go prove it and show that we're collecting it and doing it, the reality is we could be doing that better on a daily basis to see when it stops doing what it's supposed to be doing, not waiting in between these times. So I think there's that component of it. I actually want to throw something back to Gary, because Gary's been really good at this in his career, is getting the business buy-in to do some of this, right? Like the business side of pushing security requirements as operational initiatives within the business. Gary, you've spent a lot of time in product organizations. Wondering if you can give your thoughts on how we might be able to all do this better with our partners on the technology and business side.
Steak dinners. That's what Gary's going to say. Steak dinners. Take them out to steak dinners.
Oh,
No one says no after a steak dinner.
It's like fish tacos and beer. You got to make it interesting.
Exactly.
So, I'm sorry, Roland. Can you restate the question?
So, we want them to fundamentally change the way that they do collection, our peers in other organizations. So turning certain things on, ensuring that those are collected, and giving us a mechanism by which to validate. Are there better ways to do it, especially when it's in product organizations that help them see the light at the end of the tunnel and want to be a part of this, instead of us having to come up with another $1 billion to add automation into our environment?
Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty sure there's probably a bunch of startups that are saying, "Don't say it," because they're making money off of it. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's in some of the organizations I've been at where, and as you were, and as you were eloquently, touching on, a lot of the data that we're having to pull to go ahead and keep regulators or keep auditors happy, we don't freaking own it. It's not ours, but for some reason we end up getting tagged to go ahead and have to pull it together, and which was some of the stuff that we built our GPTs to go collect from, because I just got tired of my people having to go ahead and go over, to legal or go over to whomever to go ahead and pull documents. Um, I mean, I've been at organizations where, like when I was at WebRoot and we were trying to go ahead and get ISO certified so we could meet GDPR, requirements, with and we had a ton of dev teams and product teams in the EU, and I got to the point to where, doing online meetings and doing emails just wasn't doing it, and then finally what ended up happening was myself and my COO, we both just went on a walkabout. I mean, we just got a bunch of plane tickets and flew over to the EU, and we went and sat in front of these people and had lunch with them and sat and talked to them. And, and we gave them our roadmap, explained to them what we were doing, but I honestly sat and listened most of the time, and a lot of griping, a lot of issues, and this, that, and the other. We found out a lot of these people were part of M&As that had been done previously, and were never really fully assimilated into the company. So they didn't really feel like they were part of the WebRoot family. They felt like they were blah, 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 and still waiting to be assimilated. And so there was a bunch of things that we kind of realized needed to be fixed, along with them, giving us data and stuff that we needed so that we could meet our GRC requirements. Um, but what we ended up finding was spending that time with them and finding that we actually cared and that we wanted to go ahead and chat with them and being very visible as to what we needed and everything from them. It was just amazing. It did a ton of stuff, changing wise, inside the business. I mean, we even found some of the dev teams were using, software, or they needed tools, or they needed stuff on their laptops. We had no idea, and but it was just, giving that time and just listening and taking notes and being able to kind of meet them halfway so that we could make changes, and it really helped us improve over time, over the 6 month cycle that we had. We got certified, we met GDPR, and I think we were better as a business for it, spending that time with them, so that they could see what we needed, but at the same time we could see what they wanted from us, and what the purpose was, and it was no longer them being in their islands. They were still, dev teams, and they were still going to be squirrels on things. But the thing about it is I now had people that I could talk to, because we had met each other, we had spent time together, we had whiskeys together, and argued about wives and kids and stuff like that together. And you start building that kind of a relationship, and we got things done, and we were able to go ahead and get things done. And I'm finding, in employers after that I went, and even at SoftBank, where I was dealing with, organizations outside of the SoftBank family, I would have to put in that extra time with them, because we just weren't an entity that just wanted something. Instead, they had a name, to me. They knew who I was. We had met, we had talked, and then they understand the requirements were needed because the business wanted to make a change. The business needed to pivot. We needed to go ahead and install, and wanted to do things with AI, and there was no way we were going to be able to do that unless we could go ahead and get these services in place, or unless we had specific data to make our regulators happy, so that then we could then move forward. And I find some CISOs don't like that because maybe they're more technical. They don't like dealing with carbon-based life forms. They don't really want to deal with the people aspect sometimes. I do think it's a soft skill that some of us kind of pick up over time, that you start realizing that, hey, you need to be more open. You need to spend time, with the individuals and kind of establish the relationship so that you can work with them. But also it's also an understanding that it's a give and take. You just can't go ahead and just pound on people and ask for stuff. there you need to be able to meet in the middle. There's going to be things that they're going to want from you as well, because they're going to have to go back and tell their people on their end, hey, there's a reason why we're doing this, and we're going to be better together if we do it. You know, and so I think there you're kind of stepping more out of the technical piece, and you're standing more into the people side of doing cyber. And some of us are very good at it, and have excelled at it really, really well. I find I constantly take notes and learn from peers like yourself and other CISOs that are very good at working, with people and other entities. And I constantly kind of take notes, and I'm like, oh, this is a different approach or a different way to go ahead and do it. But it's things that I definitely recommend when I talk with with our peers, friends of ours that are dealing with an issue, that try to turn that issue into an opportunity, and there's different approaches for it.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I think to your point, Gary, and certainly where I get in, I've obviously been very public about the fact that I focus on a lot of the behavioral science aspects of cybersecurity and just the way we do things. And there's certainly there's both science and there's just psychology behind. You're a lot more willing to do things with for people who you have a good relationship with than people who are just asking you. If you don't like your next door neighbor and he says, "Go cut your grass," you're like, "Oh, screw you! Don't tell me what to do." Your best friend asks you, "Can you help me move a couch?" You might go, "Yeah, I really don't want, but I'll help you because you're my friend and I'll help you. No big deal." Um, and there's something to be said about that. So, Dale, coming back to you because really what's kind of brought us here today, contrary to the movies, is not marriage. What has brought us today is the report that we've got in front of us, and that everybody can download the State of CCM report. What was the most interesting? And I have an answer, but I want to see what yours. What was the most like glaring statistic that stood out to you in the report?
The maturity gaps, right? And the amount of maturity gaps that actually exist. And it's not because CISOs don't want to do CCM. It's because of bad practices, right? It's because of bad practices that spurred from GRC, and people don't know how to make the transition, right? I'm talking about um, communication silos where compliance and security are still separated, right? And then you add complexities around compliance as code. You're baking security into pipelines, and they don't know how to communicate effectively there. So there's no line of communication, and so you have very organizations instead of things that are working together. The other thing is controls are just not designed for automation. Traditional controls, and you can read it in any set of frameworks that you pull up, right? Everybody's familiar with the dash ones, right? They're all manual review of policies, right? Which is why as FedRAMP shifts into 20X and we use the 20X pilot, I think we're going to start to see more and more of the regulatory framework start to leverage um, key security indicators to get the compliance results that we're looking for. I think tool sprawl was another kind of thing. Is I have all of these toys, right, and they all do different things, and they're all over the place. How do I bring them into one area and get good outcomes? So those are kind of the top three things that I took from the report. And I'd be interested in hearing what your take was on it from it.
Yeah, so interesting. I'm glad that you pulled some of the what I'll call the B-side tracks of the report, because the one that I pulled was actually one that was really a top line statistic, both in the report and the marketing material, because it really did stand out to me. And especially because it's like thinking about where the gaps exist between perception and actual reality, are always very interesting to me. First of all, the report we're talking about, if you click on if anyone of you is watching, if you're looking at the buttons in front of you, you've got four buttons in the middle. The one that is third from the left or second from the right, that looks like two pieces of paper. You can click that, get the link to the quick two-page brief, or a link to the actual report where you can get that. But to me, what stood out, Dale, was the statistic about 28% of organizations actually doing CCM. Because what I think of when I see that statistic is not what is the percentage that are actually doing it, but what are the percentage that think they're doing it and doing it
Right.
well, that didn't, so 28% is how many are actually doing it. But I'm venturing a guess that if the question had been, "Do you think you're doing continuous control monitoring well?" that number would have been in the 80s, maybe the low 90s, maybe it cracks the 90s. But you'd have a lot higher rate of people. You'd certainly have over 50% of them saying, "Yeah, I think we're doing it. I think we're doing it." Like no one's gonna, because there's that perception bias. But um, you know how like how do we close that gap? How do we say, you know what? It 28% seems very scary to me, because what I'm wondering is how many of the organizations that are in the 72% that are on the other side of this, that are not doing it, are organizations that we would rather not be in that bucket. So from your perspective, Dale, what did you guys, was there something that, like, the common themes that you're like, is it budget, is it technical, is it's a lot of work? I mean, and as part of this, I'm going to open up to Roland, because I know, Roland, you've got a quote where you talk about the number of hours people are spending on stuff, and I'm a huge proponent. A lot of what I focus on is optimizing time and making people's time more effective by finding ways to implement things better. But um yeah.
So I think some of the biggest blockers were the audit first mindset instead of risk first mindset.
I
Um,
just need to pass my audit and get the auditor to leave me alone, and I'm good for a year.
yeah, and I mean, and when compliance is a cost center and looked at as a cost center and not as a business center, right? Then it becomes, what do I need to do to be compliant? And if you don't break out of the what do I need to do to be compliant mode, right, you'll never really get into CCM because they've been doing it the same way for decades. And there's no reason for some of these businesses to change. Then I present the argument that technology is good forcing you to change. Uh, the speed of innovation. I mean, you're gonna if you keep doing compliance the same way, you're gonna slow your organization down. You're not gonna open up new lines of business. It's gonna become a blocker. And I think the other one is leadership tolerance for green at audit time. If you're thumbs up at audit time, right, then you're good. And there's never really a sore spot that causes you to move into continuous controls monitoring. Where I think that the forward leaning CISOs that actually see the value in their time of for their resources are looking to optimize that time, right? Because the subjective nature of controls, the regulations are going to keep piling on, and you're not going to be able to accomplish all of your functionality without shifting into an operational control assurance type of environment that it moves from point in time to always being audit ready. You're just not going to be able to bring in new business or optimize the old business if you don't shift your mindset.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple things that you said that I really want to kind of double click on. The first is this idea that, if you're hoping, back to my analogy, if you're hoping that mom isn't going to look in the closet, mom already knows what's in the closet. Mom knows that you're hiding stuff in the closet. Like, you're not going to get it past it. Like, the auditor knows, if you're like, "Don't look in the closet," the auditor knows that you don't want them to look in the closet for a reason. Or if you're like steering them away from the closet, they're going to know that something's up. The other aspect of it is, the last thing you want. Great, that audit mindset is not great, but what's worse is to have customer XYZ, who's going to give you, $5 million of revenue, go, "Hey, can you show us proof today that how you're doing this?" And they go, they see it and go, well, you know what, we're going to go with your competitor because they're actually doing it. That's the bigger, audit is one thing. It's a whole nother thing when a customer, because, how I'll pose this question before we go to, Gary and Roland for their thoughts on what we've been talking about. But uh, Gary, Roland, and I know I've been in these conversations before, in these Slack channels and conversations before. How often does one CISO talk to another about the tools and say, "Hey, what's your experience been with them?" Does that ever? Are you making decisions without reaching out to your peers and asking them their experiences, or if they like discovered any skeletons? And then, what are your thoughts in terms of this idea of like how do we close that gap?
So, I mean, happy to answer your question directly. I always ask other people that are using,
Of course.
specific technology vendor, what have you. What was, what was your experience like? So, I
It's
think,
almost a rhetorical question.
yeah, I mean, how can you not? But I think we need to take some ownership for the gap. I mean, I really do. I think it's guys like me and Gary and Dale and all of our peers who are busy. We're getting pummeled by threats incoming, typhoon this, typhoon that, got to go focus on our controls and our defensive capabilities within our clouds. Wait a minute, we got a new product going to market. Our code is being attacked. Like, we got a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of poo that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and we reprioritize. However, we will never get there to an OCA capability, or an operational controls assurance capability in the automation, without a couple things. And I think I bury it down to these 5 things that we can do that will change the game. The first is create a plan. Because if you're not heading towards anything, you're not heading anywheres. And the idea that the industry will deliver it, well, we're still waiting, right? And we've been doing
Yeah.
this, I don't know, Gary, you and me, 30 years. Dale, just
Yeah,
behind
pretty
us,
much.
25. So
You all
the reality
started.
is,
You all started just after kindergarten
it
doing
was
CISO
a
work,
rainbow
right?
series, I think, back
Okay.
then. But literally, you create the plan that you're heading towards. This is what we're going to do, and you make the statement, draw the line in the stand, and then we work back from there. One of the first things we have to do, the number 2 thing, is workforce planning. And Gary talked about this, right? Like, I'm not going to hire a firewall engineer 2 for cloud anymore. I need AI specific, data science capabilities. I need people in compliance that can write code. I need, like, it's a different world. So when you build that plan, build a new workforce plan specific for the plan that you're trying to get to, and set the tone with your organization. Our work families are not going to be the same in 2 years. I need you to migrate to this, or someone else is going to do it, and toe that line and make it a reality. The third is architect for multi-year. Like, this stuff does take time. I'm not saying you're going to flip this in 1 year or 2 year or 3 year, especially depending on the size of your organization. So no, I need partners that get my plan. I need technology that enables it, and I need products that'll see it through. Because even if I get it to what I believe CCMA is through the data collection, analysis, and automation of testing, validation, and data control, someone still has to do the reporting across 50 different compliancy agencies and automate that. Like, someone still has to do that and figure it out for me. The fourth thing is, and you were just starting to talk about it, Dustin, is the total cost of not compliance. I don't even know how to put that. Like, so
Cost of
is
inaction.
what is the opportunity lost? What markets can't we go to? What agencies can we not sell to? What lawsuits are we opening ourselves up to? What lawsuits can we not defend ourselves against? Right? Like, think about the opportunity costs that we're costing our business in markets that we can't provide reasonable compliance for. So that is a real business issue. As you're building your business case, you have to think about that, be able to articulate it, talk to your business partners in the go-to-market and sales so you understand what their strategy is, and prioritize those things. And that's a lot. But I think the last things is moving from risk to results. So what are those prioritized things that we're talking about, not just compliance, not just business imperatives, but actual risks, and how do we stack rank those as we're going along into results? So the kind of that RTR perspective, and then yeah, I could go through 10 other things, but I think those 5 get us 2 years, 3 years down with 80% change.
Yeah, and I think the thing that you were talking about, the total cost of inaction. One of my most salient memories of something like that is, when I joined my last organization, they were trying to decide, should we do UK Cyber Essentials, and all they had to do was start totaling up the contracts they wouldn't get, if they wouldn't be able to bid on, if they didn't have UK Cyber Essentials. And as soon as they hit $5 million, they're like, okay, cool, yeah, we got to do this. Like,
I wish I had another microphone. I'd drop it. I mean,
yeah,
exactly.
the minute you hit a number that everybody goes, that's a lot of money, it kicks gear into action. We were able to get compliant and ready to go within 3 months of that meeting, because everybody said, yeah, this is we're going to spend some money to do it, but we're going to, the opportunity lost is way higher. So we're running low on time. I want to make sure we have time for some of the questions that we've gotten in. But before we do that, and before we do that, something that I've been doing this year that I think makes a lot of these webinars really fun, and certainly when we're talking with CISOs of your caliber, it's fun for the audience to be able to see, that you all are not as scary and unapproachable as it might seem, because you've got this cool title called CISO. And I like to do a sort of a lightning round of things, so I'm going to ask it, and they're all relevant to the topic we're talking about, but I want to just get your candid responses. So the first one that I wanted to ask was, I think everybody's got a control that outwardly they'll say, oh, I hate this control, I can't believe we have to do it. But inwardly you're like, oh, thank God we have to do this. So what's that control that you're like, I wish, like, outwardly I think this is a waste of time, but inwardly you're like, thank God we are doing this? I'll go with Dale first, because it looks like he's got an answer already.
I have 2, and I think Gary will agree with these. Right, AC2, right? The AC2 control. It's like 18 broken down in that one control, and it makes me want to punch my computer screen every time I have to go through them. But it is potentially one of the most relevant, and the other one is CM6, both in the NIST 853 side of things. But CM6 is just kind of that catch-all in configuration management that I hate to have to write to, but thank God it's there, right? It ensures a standard that I don't know that other folks would meet willingly.
Gary, your thought?
Well, I'm not going to go ahead and give the control and sub-control numbers that Dale is doing.
Okay.
I'm impressed. I just got to say it.
That's what I'm just saying.
That's like a 500-page document that Dale has memorized.
Yeah.
I'm either embarrassed or impressed, or both.
That's like Rain Man style. He's like CM6, definitely CM6.
Yeah, I'm definitely forth while I'm doing it. So yeah, no, absolutely. I'm sorry. I have a tendency to be a bit granular when we start talking about compliance. I apologize.
Oh, hey, I love it, Gary.
No, I'm just saying. I think out of the myriad of controls across all the different frameworks that I've done, and I think I've done all of them at one time or another, depending on which employer I was at. I think the one that drives me just straight crazy, but at the same time I know it's needed, is patch management. Is the fact that you continuously have to do it. You need it to be able to manage vulnerabilities. You need it to be able to keep things up to date, but it's never ending. And no matter which technology you're using to push it out, there's always issues at times on the endpoint, or the virtual machine that you're dealing with. Sometimes it takes, sometimes it doesn't. You continuously have to go back and review and then rescan vulnerabilities again. It just, it's one of those ones that, it's needed, but it at times drives you crazy, and it can be very, very complex, or it can be really easy. it's one of those ones that it definitely keeps you gainfully employed, but at the same, it's yeah.
Yeah. Roland, your thought?
Uh, Gosh, something I really dislike. It's got to be policy change control assurance. Like, I'm writing change control about change control for documentation of
Yeah,
documentation.
yeah,
I mean, and I'm not even sure I like the idea of it. So I
yeah.
might hate both that the fact that we got to do it and the fact that it's there. There's got to be a better way to do that stuff. But yeah,
Dude,
like that stuff drives me nuts.
we actually, with some of the GPTs we were building, we built one to go ahead and do that, and it broke down. And
I
The GPT was
Harry,
like,
I
no
break
thanks.
down every
The,
time I read
the
that stuff. I
GPT
break down.
the GPT
and
was like, no thanks,
I
I'm
honestly
good.
think I honestly think we probably drove the GPT crazy, and it just said, "No, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore."
So so
Cannot
so
compute. I don't want to play. Yeah, I could
so
just
in
see
other
Oh
that.
my
words,
god,
so in other
I'm
words, when the AI robot overlords take over, Gary and his team are on the list of immediate removal, and the rest of us at least have a head start to run away. Got
but
it.
Dale will be the face of it. He'll be like on an R2D2, an AI going cannot compute. Like I'm so going
No,
into some new
actually, what it'll
AI
be is
video stuff this week with that.
instead of the voice of Hal, it'll just be Gary's voice saying, "Sorry, I can't. Sorry, Dave, I cannot do that." That'll
Yeah,
be what it'll end
like
up
yeah.
being.
So,
No,
and I think
Actually,
I think there's one I'd like to add. Right,
yeah, please.
questionnaires. We have these giant compliance packages that if you would just take a look at the compliance package, it has all the answers, but you still give me a 200 question questionnaire for onboarding.
So, so,
Why? I don't get it.
so yeah, so this will give me a chance before we go to final thoughts, because we're running a little low on time. um Dale, this will give me a really good opportunity to plug the fact that one of the things that we at the Cyber Risk Collaborative have, and that I'm really proud of, is we have various toolkits. There are resource guides that and actual tools to help you do the job of security better. And we commissioned, or our members asked for, a third party risk task force that met last year. And one of the things we did as part of it was we took those 200 questionnaires and said, okay, if I answer no to this question, does it really matter? And let's go through which are the ones where if somebody says no, I'm going to go, ooh, that's problematic. Like, do I really care if you say no, I don't have an ISO cert? Maybe not. If you said yes to everything else, maybe I don't mind, depending on the size of the organization. And what we were able to figure out was there were really only about 30, maybe 35 questions that really truly needed to be asked, and at least as a starting point, so that you could, if they've given you other documentation, you could say, you know what, I love the documentation, we'll review it, but here are the 30 questions we still just need you to answer. We're not asking you to answer 200. Please just answer these 30 for us, please. And that has seen a lot of, so that's the kind of stuff that I know our members here at the Cyber Risk Collaborative like. It's one of the things that we like doing as well. It's a lot of fun because I was in charge of third party risk at many of my organizations, and I hated both getting. We were in the middle of the supply chain, so we would get them and we would send them, and I'm like, why am I going to make them, like, I hate the fact that I have to do one that I would never send to somebody, or vice versa. I'm never going to send them one that I wouldn't do myself. So we're wrapping up. We've got just a few minutes left. 30 seconds, quick thoughts. One big key takeaway, that if tomorrow, or okay, it's Thursday, we'll give people till Monday. The one thing that they should be doing, to move this forward, and Dale, for yours, it has to be beyond just give Reg Scale a call. Like, I want an actual
Very
practical
Come
well.
thing.
on, that was an easy out.
You don't get the easy out of just call Reg Scale, which
Check.
is a great idea. That's why we have our tech partners here. But we'll start with you, Gary. What's the one kind of key takeaway thing, that practical tip for people to think about?
Well, I would suggest you actually download the report and read it so you can see, they're not kidding. They did talk to a lot of people, and there are gaps, there are issues and stuff like that. I thought it was quite interesting reading. I think the big thing is understanding that there is gaps, and there are, and that you have to continuously look at them, and there is discipline involved in this. You just can't buy technology and boom, it fixes itself. There's also a people aspect of it, and you got to build it into the culture of your teams and make it repeatable. And make it a repeatable thing. And as Roland has alluded to, you automate the stupid stuff. You get rid of this the mind numbing, brain numbing stuff, that your team freaking hates, that will skip, that actually leads to some of these gaps. You go ahead and you try to automate a lot of that stuff, and then so you can focus on the things that really matter.
Awesome. Thank you. Roland, your thoughts?
I say change the dynamic, change the world. Start focusing on OCA, or Operational Controls Assurance. Don't think of it as compliance anymore. Compliance will fall from it. And from that perspective, do kind of the things that we talked about earlier. Create a plan, create your workforce, work with your business on understanding what the cost lost is if you don't do this, and then start going in and prioritize risk order. And I think you go a long ways. And you know what? If you get a digital Dale robot, I think that would be really, really cool too.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I live just outside of Houston, and I heard recently that that in Austin, Tesla's configuring one of their factories to build robots. So they haven't said much about it. So I wouldn't surprise me if it was a Dale robot all of a sudden. I'm just saying. And I do have to ask before I have to do have to ask before we come to Dale. OCA are you paying Reg Scale the royalty, or is Reg Scale paying you the royalty?
I thought I'd just ask Gartner to pay me later.
Oh, okay.
That's the way to do
it. Dale, from your perspective, key takeaway, and then as part of that, for anybody who doesn't know who Reg Scale is, obviously they're living under a rock. But quick little blurb of who you guys are and where they can find out more.
So I think that when you start talking about CCM, you fundamentally changes the CISO's conversation, right? So without CCM, you're having risk discussions as a historical discussion. Board updates are narrative based, right? Control effectiveness is assumed rather than proved. When you start to demonstrate CCM, your risk becomes measurable, control failure becomes observable, ownership becomes traceable, and the board conversation shifts from are we compliant to are our controls working today and what's drifting. And I think that's really the goal, is to be accountable 24/7, 365 reliably, be able to answer the tough questions with a measure of confidence.
Awesome. And of course, if people want to learn more, regscale.com, correct?
Yeah, regscale.com. You can we're on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me directly and I'll tie you to the right people. You can go to regscale.com or take, like Gary had pointed out, download the report before you log off today. Take a read, and if you see something you like, give us a jingle. We'll see if we can help you out.
Absolutely. So thank you again to this panel, Dale, Roland, Gary. Thank you to RegScale for sponsoring this, for being a great tech partner. Thank you all for attending and for listening and participating. We really appreciate your time. We really appreciate you taking a bit of time out of your day to talk about this. Download the report, read it, reach out to RegScale, reach out to us at the Cyber Risk Collaborative, Cyber Risk Alliance. And if there's anything that you all, any other topics you all want to hear from, or any tech partners you want to hear from, please reach out to us as well. Thank you all very much for being here. Have a great rest of your day, great upcoming weekend, and we'll see you again really soon.